Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Beacon Way podcast. I have a very special guest with me today. His name is Peter House, and he is with DeepTree. And remind me, it's Gray Raven?
Gray,
Is that right?
Gray Raven. Yeah, that's our
Gray
security
Raven
group.
on this
Yeah.
cybersecurity side. Yes. So Peter and I go a long way back. So that's part of why this is a very special episode. We have known each other since fourth grade, believe it or not. And our lives went different directions in school and professionally. And we got reintroduced a few years back by a colleague. And Peter does managed service IT. And we had a desperate need in that arena because I was the one having to do the IT. And trust me, our team really wanted more help than what I could provide. So we have been working with DeepTree for a few years now, and it's been amazing. And so we really enjoy Peter and his team's expertise, both on the IT side and the cybersecurity side. I definitely have to say the peace of mind of just knowing you and your team have got our backs has been one of the biggest weights off my shoulders professionally. I know we're going to talk a lot today about that transition from founder, where you wear every hat that you could possibly wear, to hence me being IT in our company, to CEO, where you start handing things off. And I know this one was, not only was it amazing to get reconnected as adults and get caught up on each other's lives and just to see what we'd both done in our professional careers, but also to get to work together and just the peace of mind that you guys bring to our world is invaluable. So I'm really excited to get to talk to you today, Peter, and thank you so much for everything that you do for us.
Yeah, and thanks for having me on. Frankly, when it comes to marketing and media, the same can be said about you and your team, and we appreciate your leadership there as well too, so very
Oh,
much.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's amazing when you can have those partnerships back and forth. I know sometimes it can get a little dicey when you're working, both companies are working with each other, but I've been very thankful for just the open and honest communication we've been able to have between companies. And that's really kind of smoothed over a lot and helped us work through a lot of the natural bumps that happen. That's been a really, really beautiful thing.
Character matters. Who knew?
Right. So tell us a little bit about your story. What inspired you to start a managed service provider, an IT company? And there's usually, most of us founders, there's something that prompted us to get into it, something that prompted us to solve a problem. It seems like that's typically at the core. So tell us a little bit about your origin story, if you will.
Yeah, thank you. So it's about 12 years ago, I suppose now. I was 35 at the time. And I was in an interesting place. I was an IT manager. I was right below the CIO, and I was working. We were working together for an IT department that had roughly about 11 million in budget, and I had a responsibility for a portion of that. And I had really gotten into organizational cybernetics, for example. That's like John Stafford Beer, for example, and it was organizational systems, and I was noticing like there's these different ways that organizations can be put together. And I had read a book by John Seddon that had this reminds me so much even yet today of the responsibility we have as CEOs, and that is that organizations that have empowerment programs are organizations that don't have empowerment baked in, and they have to try to add it on, bolt it in. And where was that at the time was I was thinking about, boy, it would be really great to have a business where empowerment is baked into the organizational culture, into the organizational structure, the covenants that are set between the colleagues and between, the company and their clientele as well too. And I was feeling that 35-year, I was getting that itch of like wanting to create something. What I set out to do was not where we ended up. We'll talk a little bit about that. So I was also really into enterprise architecture. I was really in this phase of systems, whether they're organizational systems or they're technology
Hmm.
systems, how they interrelate with each other.
Hmm.
There's a capability maturity model where you can grade your processes. And IT really expects a capability maturity model score of about 3 for your processes, where they have to be consistent and repeatable. A
Mm.
lot of work that I was doing at the time was about lifting up our organizational processes to a place where software could actually be deployed to drive those processes.
Oh,
And I thought,
nice.
boy, wouldn't it be really great to have a consulting firm that does this? And
Yes.
so I set out to do exactly that and got exactly one customer. So
Yeah.
and I, and they took really good care of me. I was a freelancer at the time. DeepTree was the name. I had this intent to build something beyond myself.
Hmm.
And, I'm sitting there thinking, goodness, I can't make a living this way.
Mm.
You have one customer that eventually they'll probably wise up and say, we just make you an employee, right? Get a less of an impact, right? Like, hey, we like
Hmm.
what you're doing. And so I spent some time with a couple of friends down in the Northwest, one of which was just in the process of selling his startup to Amazon at the time. And
Oh, wow.
he had shared with me that he had this, I came to him with this problem, like, well, nobody wants what I'm buying. And he had the exact same issue, it turned out. Because what
Hmm.
he had built, if you knew what it was, you had one already, which anybody who knew
Oh,
what enterprise architecture was, if they needed it, they had an enterprise architect in house. It would
gotcha.
be
Hmm.
really, again, that run rate, right? They've insourced it, so it's not as expensive as a consultant. And
Sure.
if you didn't know what one was, you didn't need it.
Or you didn't know you needed it,
You didn't know you
probably at
needed
that
it, right?
point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe things would be different if we were working together then, had a great marketing team behind us. But, it is what it is. And so what he suggested I do is what he did, which is he's like, I went out and booked all of the different work I could possibly get.
Hmm.
And a pattern in the market's going to emerge. And you're
Right.
going to need to solve that problem. Find
Hmm.
the problem, find the pattern. And that's
Right.
what I ended up doing. And that ended up leading us towards managed services, but with a very clear focus on stability, security, and service, or true
Right.
service, authentic service. And that's really where we've planted our flag.
Wow. Yeah. I think that it's interesting to hear. I think so many of us, like, I didn't start off to do marketing either. I was doing graphic design and branding and websites. And the pattern that emerged for me was clients, we develop this amazing logo and we do brochures and business cards because that was the whole era back then. And the client would show up and we'd give them their gorgeous materials and their thumb drive with all of their stuff on it. And they're like, oh, this is so exciting. What do I do with it? And it was like,
Right?
what, you don't have a plan? Like, wait a minute. They're like, well, yeah, I mean, I assumed I needed to do, some other stuff, but like, can you help me with that? And it was like, sure, I'm sure we could do something. And so I started doing like this marketing consulting, and they're like, well, so you can like handle the radio media buys, right? And I'm going, oh no, that's a whole other beast, But it was very interesting because it was a organic problem and pattern that started to emerge, and that's what brought Jennifer and I together back in 2012. Was she was doing the marketing side and I was doing the design side, and it kind of came together. But yeah, it was not a pattern I was looking for either. Enjoying doing brands and logos, although I could tell social media was in the process of changing all of that. So I was actually looking at getting out of the business altogether when I
Oh,
met Jennifer. Yeah, because I was just like, people aren't going to need brochures like they used to. We're not going to be doing yellow page ads anymore, which I was thankful for that. That was not the fun side of design, to say the least. So, yeah. What was one of, I mean, you were talking about one of your challenges being finding the right service in some ways to meet the customer need. Once you kind of found that and you started putting things together, what were some of the significant challenges that came up for you and kind of how did you overcome them?
I I have a particularly unique story on that one,
Ooh.
and so one of the challenges was personal. Actually, about
Mm.
a year and a half into the founding process and starting the company, I had a traumatic brain injury, and
Mm.
um, I have a scar now up in the upper portion of my skull here.
Wow.
I had something that's called subdural hematoma, which has a high fatality rate, not
Mm.
because it's not addressable, but because a lot of times it comes across as a concussion. And
Oh.
by the time you figure out it's a concussion, it's not a concussion. It's too late.
Wow.
I was very fortunate that somebody called 911. There's a lot of detail in there.
Sure.
There's a lot of minor miracles, if you will, that occurred along the way.
Mm.
But there was a real favor that was done there. I was still
Mm.
figuring out where to go with the company, but I joke with my friends that I had my factory defaults reset. I had to learn how to read again. It was a bit of a trip.
Mm.
But I woke
Yeah.
up from that. I was in the ICU for about a week, and then they shipped me back home, which is great because staying at a hospital is a really expensive hotel with a lot less services in terms of
Terrible
amenities.
food.
This is very yeah, food. There's no pool. I just it's not,
Me and
not as
my
fun.
yeah, I see you to the pool. That totally makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but obviously, that space is being used with life saving equipment, and
Right.
we appreciate it so very much. I
Yes, we
certainly
do.
do. And so being trucked out, you get a sense, and we've all met people. Maybe we've experienced this ourselves, where we've gone through a near death experience. We thought
Yeah.
very carefully about why is it that we're still here? What is the mission? And my focus at the time and still is to this day is about stabilizing and ensuring that we're on the right side of our customers and making sure that we're
Mm.
um, I don't want to sound too dramatic about it, but that we're actively taking a stand against evil, right? There's
Mm.
operators
Yeah.
out there by choice or happenstance that are you know, essentially threatening the livelihoods of
Yeah.
their customers. And security is a little bit like if we go back to, like the difference between like a firewall or a car, like the safety features for a car are built in. The point of the
Right.
car isn't to be safe. The point of the car is to transport. But the
True.
safety is part and parcel of it.
Hmm.
And I had this fire that, and still do have this fire that burns inside to defend those networks, to make our customers really not have to worry about it, right?
Hmm.
When you look at the word security, it comes from the Latin word
Yeah.
securitas, which is this lightness of being that comes from feeling like your affairs have been handled, your business is in
Mm.
order, and you feel like you can just focus on what's at hand. And that's
Nice.
really the mission that DeepTree has is we're the point of the IT isn't to be secure. The point of the IT
Mm.
is to drive the business processes that support the value proposition of the organization. But
Hmm.
it just like a car has to have a 3-point harness and has to have airbags and all these other things.
Right.
That instrumentation needs to be secure as well too. And that
Hmm.
was the emergent, obviously at that time not nearly as sophisticated as I just described it. It was like,
Right.
oh, we're gonna really focus on this. So as part of
Right.
my journey, I focused on making sure that we do the same thing at DeepTree, that it's not bolted on, it's baked in, and
Mm.
that's where
Love that.
um, you know, we've sort of set the goalposts for ourselves.
Yeah.
So
No,
yeah,
that's really powerful. Well, I'm glad somebody helped and yeah, you're still here today. It's really amazing.
very appreciative. Yes,
Yeah.
call 911. Hit your head.
Yeah.
Call 911.
Right. Yes. Immediately. Well, I love your analogy of the security, being integral to it, but not, this is going to sound weird, but not the primary purpose, because I think that is a unique but really important balance. And I think that that's something that people that aren't in the security world, the IT world, struggle with, because you can, as you and I have had many conversations about, there's that balance between security and still being able to function. And, a car can get to the point where it's so security focused that it loses its primary purpose, which is, like you said, to transport. And a business's primary purpose is to make business, is to help their customers. But I think it's really easy to even be driven by fear to want to lock things down so much, and that we can go too far that direction and not be able to function well as a business. And I've always really appreciated your perspective on that and the balance you bring to, yes, we need security, we need all of this, but we can't have it so locked down that your people can't function. There's got to be a balance between those. And I would say, in my experience, not that it's somewhat, I would say it's somewhat limited, but in my experience, that's not a common viewpoint in the security world and in the IT world. I think we all have our tendencies to get those blinders on. When you're, what is the saying? I'm going to mess it up, but when you're a hammer, everything's a nail. So,
Yeah.
it's similar to that. But I think everybody kind of has a tendency to get locked into their perspective, and so I get that from many IT professionals. But again, I appreciate that balance because I don't find that very often. It's like, oh no, you need to lock everything down. It's like, well, if I do that, my employees can't function, they can't take care of our clients, and then we don't have a business. So finding that balance is very special, and I appreciate that your viewpoint and how you bring that to the table to clients from DeepTree, of just, yeah, we need security, but you need to be able to function as a business.
Right. Do it, but do it in a secure way. Right. Climb the
Right.
mountain, but wear a harness. Right. Unless you're really, really good,
Yeah.
maybe
Or it's a tiny mountain.
right, exactly. Maybe going up without safety, apparatus and instrumentation is not the best idea, right? You want to
Yeah.
have a harness, you want to have rope, you want to have all of those things, because
Yeah.
it's fundamentally, walking out the door is fundamentally risky. Living is fundamentally risky.
Yes.
But one of the downsides that we don't necessarily think about on the security side is that not doing something introduces a new form of risk as well too. Let's just think
Mm.
about the human body for 1 second. You can certainly not go out. You can stay inside. And
Yes.
inside there you've got, you're climate controlled, you've got access to food. In some ways it is safer than being outside.
Mm.
But then one's muscles atrophy and one
Right.
introduces new long-term risk. So
Mhm.
the question is not necessarily whether you're going to have risk versus no risk. The question is are you going to be introducing short term versus long term risk? Where
Mm.
do you want to hedge your bets? And what's the right balance for you and your organization in terms of managing that risk as you interact in the marketplace? That's it.
Mhm. Yeah. That's a beautiful summary for sure. So, as your business has grown over the years, and like you said, you had these challenges of needing to learn how to read again and do a lot of different things, that introduced a really interesting dynamic, I would say, that most founders probably don't have in their origin story. What have you found that's really helped you in work life harmony as you're navigating through a growing business? And like you said, near death experiences often change your perspective on what's important in life. So, what's some things that work for you in that kind of work life harmony? I won't say balance. I hate balance. I feel like it's harmony because it's always point to counterpoint, sort of a thing. It ebbs and flows as the song goes through. Sometimes the alto is more important, sometimes the bass is. And so, what's worked for you in that work life harmony song?
Yeah. Real quickly, though, I love your perspective on that. The ebb, the flow, right? We
Hmm.
live fundamentally in a planet that has a rhythm, right? You've got
Right.
winter, spring, summer, right? The whole works,
Yeah.
right? The songs, the tides, right? The breathing in and
Hmm.
out of oxygen that we have, the ins and out there, like it is real. And
Yeah.
work and life outside of work has the same sort of ebb and flow. Um,
Hmm.
so thinking about that at a certain level, for me, it really starts with having good people around you. Um,
Mm.
when a founder is working through, and there's different phases. There's the sprint phase, then there's the regression toward the mean. What is your marathon? What's your operational tempo look like? That all of that is just part of the comings and goings of business and the different phases
Right.
that you're in the early stages. When one is sprinting, boy, it's the tide is coming in, right? And you're going to be the person who does the brochures and the IT and the and this and that and all the other things
Yes.
as well too that go with it. Bookkeeping, right? You're one
Yes.
putting it all
HR,
in.
payroll, all of the
Exactly.
things. Yeah.
All of the things, right? And the most important thing, and I believe this 100% more than anything else, and that is character matters.
Mm.
And finding people with character matters. And I was really, really fortunate that I was able to have a number of staff members who ended up elevating themselves and arising to partnership. Both of them actually came
Nice.
in as interns.
Really?
Yeah, I know.
Wow.
I know. Speaks to the fire inside so very much
Yeah. Very.
that they were able to. Yeah. So um, I was very fortunate to have great partners. I had one that has moved on, but he was also very, very instrumental in making sure that DeepTree stayed alive during the early days when I was struggling to do the same.
Yeah.
And as I was able to get more capable, and you know, we started parceling out. Some of it was actually roles and responsibilities that came back to me as I recovered, and then some of
Mm.
them stayed with others. And ultimately, the work life balance there, part of it was just enabling. Again, it goes back to the opening bit that I had about empowerment.
Mm.
If you want to have a good work life balance, then you ought to have people that can help you achieve that balance, and you do the
Right.
same for them as well,
Yes.
right? It's a covenant,
Hmm.
right? We're going to
Right.
honor the covenant. And so for me, yes, I had to sort of learn a few things. I did, by the way, real quickly on the learning how to read. I wasn't illiterate, but for those of you that are not familiar with traumatic brain injuries, because the left lobe of my brain was damaged, my ability to sequence and order was damaged, and I
Oh,
had to rebuild that.
interesting.
So
Okay.
all the words would come to me at once. I struggled to read
Oh, wow.
because I was picking up words from different parts of the pages, even
Right.
different pages. And
Hmm.
I had to practice. I think I averaged, I went on a one book a week tear.
Wow.
I just,
Yeah.
just complete them. And
Yeah.
so it wasn't like I was, dumber than a bag of hammers. I just couldn't sequence my way out of a paper bag. Right.
Mm.
So
Wow.
that
Yeah.
was I just had to work really, really hard. I was slower and less
Hmm.
capable, but I wasn't
Sure.
starting over as if I was in kindergarten.
Nice.
So
Well, that's good at least. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So some of that came back to me as I got more and more capable, and then
Hmm.
others left. And then the other thing is that there's this concept there's a word for it now. Otium, otium. It's a Latin word. It
Mm.
means it's sort of directed leisure. It's art. It's
Yes.
exercise. It's things
Hmm.
like that. And one of the things that I've tried to do with my life, within reason, is make sure that I have a good routine. I'm a routine person. Get up every morning. At the very minimum, I'll run a 5K. Try to go
Mm.
longer, but it depends on the day. But I can usually carve out at least 45 minutes for health. And then
Nice.
reading, making sure that I spend time with family, carving out that time, and just
Hmm.
remembering to breathe deep. Um,
Mm.
we only
I
have
love that.
one life here, so
Yes.
we need to balance the commercial with the familial, with the civic
Hmm.
duties as well. And then, frankly, leave space for us to evolve and grow ourselves.
Yeah, that's an important part too. I think we often, I mean, the self care is quite the term these days, but I think, at least in my opinion, true self care is allowing for space to grow more than anything. I mean, it's nice when I go get my hair done and I feel pretty, but at the end of the day, what I really feel is worthwhile, it's that space to grow as a human.
Yes, acquiring a new skill is really important, and I want to stick with this for just 1 second.
Yeah.
As je parle un peu français, and ja говорю по-русски, no только немного. I speak a little bit of Russian as well too.
Very
These are not
nice.
languages I knew before I had my head injury. They're new.
Mm.
And how I acquired that, people are like, oh wow, you speak French so well. I really wish that have you been to France? No, no, no. Like, you want to learn language, spend 20 to 30 minutes a day for 3 to 5 years, and you'll get to mid level pretty easily. One of the things that we have when we get older, our brains harden, and our ability
Hmm.
to imprint, the energy that goes into imprinting a new memory increases, but the level of energy that's required to recall goes down, right? So we become much
Mm.
better at remembering things, and it's harder for us to learn new things. And
Right.
there's this magical period where we can stretch out that balance, or the roughly equivalent, but we have
Mm.
to push ourselves, and we have to
Right.
push ourselves in either doing something like advanced mathematics, that's like partial differential equations, topology, things that are probably just too far, a bridge too far for many of us, or you can learn a
Definitely
new
me.
language.
There you go.
Learn a new language. 20 to 30 minutes a day, and you might
Wow.
stretch out that. And
Yeah.
again, you're becoming, you're
Right.
evolving, you're growing into something new, you're
Hmm.
acquiring a new skill, and you're learning something that so many of us tend to forget as we get older: the
Hmm.
power of cumulative interest.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's not just for money. I mean, it works physically, it works mentally for sure, and emotionally too. I think for good and for bad, both accumulate one way or the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's I went. I can't say I learned a new language, but I went back and learned. Took up horseback riding again. I'd done it a little bit as a teenager, and that was one of mine. It's not a language, so maybe it doesn't count. But that brain body connection too, of
Yes.
like that, I feel like is easy to get lost, especially when I'm sitting in front of a computer screen for most of my workday. There's not a lot of brain body connection happening except maybe my fingers. And even that's going away with everything being, speaking everything out these days. So, yeah, that was interesting to get back on a horse after 20 years of not doing it. And yeah, there was a lot of like my body going, this is not okay. This is really not okay. Like you're having to balance and adjust and all kinds of stuff. But yes, I admire the language thing. I've always been fascinated by languages and how they play together. And why French and Russian? You can't hardly get two different languages. Is that part of it,
Um,
or just an interest in those two?
so the French was, it comes out of that decisive moment when I
Hmm.
was, I had regret that I had not focused my studies. I flirted with French in college because you have to
Oh.
knock it out in terms of your GERs.
Hmm.
But I never really treated it seriously, and apparently that was a deep, abiding regret of mine. So I
Interesting.
felt like the right thing to do there was address that.
Hmm.
Russian's a little bit more practical because we're in the cybersecurity space. The Russians tend to be pretty prolific, and
Mm.
being able to speak and read Russian, Cyrillic's still challenging for me, but I'm very nascent, very early in this, but yeah,
Mm. Hmm.
but I can still sort of sound out the words with the
Yes.
characters very slowly, like Alexander. So I could do that, but it's helpful. So it pushes me. It puts me into being uncomfortable and being comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
As business owners, we will find ourselves in these moments where we are going to be fundamentally in an uncomfortable situation.
Right.
And we don't want to lose our confidence in our capabilities to get the outcomes that we're looking for just because the situation is uncomfortable.
Hmm. Right.
So practicing and putting myself in those uncomfortable situations, even if it's private. But
Mm.
I'm a judging, thinking person, and I assess myself, and I can get embarrassed even when it's by myself, thinking about
Yeah.
how I just bumbled that word. And
Right. Yeah.
being able to restabilize, I think, is something that it's good to get some practice on that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that adage applied to business that really you just got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because that really is, business is really about trying new things constantly. And even oftentimes, like you were talking about before, having the right people around you. When you have the right people around you, they're going to challenge you. They should be challenging you. They should be
Yes.
bringing ideas forward that it's like, oh my gosh, I never thought of that before. That's awesome. Oh crap, how are we going to do that? Or knowing that that's going to push everybody into a place of being uncomfortable. We talk about this a lot in at Beacon and in digital marketing, and I imagine it's similar with you guys, because there's always something new coming out, always something new that we have to adapt to, or decide if it's something we should adapt to, because there's times
Yes.
it's like, okay, that's new. That is so cutting edge. It's beyond cutting edge. It's bleeding edge at this point. We're going to wait to see how it plays out before we jump on that. But you still have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable enough to wade into it and see, is this something that we need to implement for our clients, or sit back and watch and then jump in later, or not jump in. But I don't think that's a commonplace for most people, being comfortable with the uncomfortable. I think it's a choice you have to make, because I think our human nature tends to veer not that direction, although there does seem to be some of us that are hardwired to be crazy enough to pursue it. And I'm not sure what that says about us. Maybe there's a few wires loose. I don't know.
It takes all kinds to make up a world, right?
This is true.
Yeah. I think that, I love that point that you're making about even with technology, right? There's a really great book, "What Technology Wants" by Kevin Kelly. He founded
Mm.
Wired magazine, actually,
Oh, okay.
and he looks at technology through this lens of the tree of life, right? And
Hmm.
there's different stems where there's a terminus, and the technology reaches
Yeah.
a certain level of homeostasis, right? Like the shovel doesn't have a lot of evolution, right?
No.
Right, shovels to shovel, right? Other things
Yes.
are far more complicated,
Hmm.
but we often find ourselves, at least in technology, and I'm sure you feel this way as well too, because you are in many ways a technology firm yourself.
Yes. I mean, they've
And
coined a term for it, MarTech.
of
I mean,
course they did.
marketing and tech are just,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
we're
There's fintech.
uncomfortable bedfellows sometimes, but yes, MarTech, we can't escape it. No.
Yeah. Oh boy. Okay, you're gonna throw an S in front of that? Smart tech, Martech. I don't know. Maybe we should get a marketing firm to look at that, see if there's
Oh,
a way to
maybe.
fuse those
Yes.
together. Um, but
MarTech.
yeah, but the thing is we often find ourselves there's it's almost like a bit of like a saddle curve, right? Where
Mm,
at least in technology, you've got the folks that are very reticent, right? So you got folks that are like very reticent to go to the cloud, for example, and
right.
then you have everybody who's like all cloud all the time, right?
Hmm.
Where's the middle space? That's, I think, the
Right.
place where thinking about like what technology wants, looking, assessing, understanding what is the objective of the technology, what's the value proposition, how is it going to fit, because there's a place for assessing and being right behind the bleeding edge where things are
Hmm.
falling off, or a supplier that you thought you go all in on, and then they go out of business, right? And now you're
Right.
scrambling. You've got 60 days or something like that to retrieve your data and move to another platform. These are
Right.
real things that business owners have to be thinking about at some level if you're at the bleeding edge. Now,
Hmm.
on the flip side, if you wait too long, sometimes there's moments where there's advantage to being an early mover.
Right.
So it all depends, right? It's the typical consulting answer, right? It all
Right.
depends on the situation and the context of,
Sure.
is this technology favorable to an early adopter?
Mm-hmm.
For example, the first, um, sorry, that was my phone.
Haven't heard that tone in a very long time.
Yeah, that's what I selected a dial up modem, and all the old heads when they hear that, like they're like, "Whoa, where's the dial up modem?"
Right?
Anybody who's not our age or older who doesn't remember
Mm-hmm.
dial up modems are like, "What is that terrible, obnoxious sound? And why am I hearing it?"
Oh, and how many times do we have to sit there and listen to that sound and wait for the, oh man. And now I have no patience if my internet's not like this. And I'm like, wow, I've come a long way, and not necessarily in a good way, because we used to have to listen to that sound and wait forever. And then we get disconnected, and oh my God, we'd have to listen to it all over again to get reconnected. And then somebody picks up the phone, because back, when our internet was tied to our phone lines, somebody'd pick up the phone and make a call, and knock your internet off. Oh man.
Mom.
I know. Get off the phone. I'm on yeah. Oh man. Those days. I can't say I miss those, and don't miss that sound. So for all of you listeners that know what that sound is, will get as much a kick out of it as we did. So that's
Yeah,
your dial tone or
yeah.
your ringtone. Oh, that's great.
I thought I put it on silent. Apparently, I turned it off
No.
silent.
Well, it
Um,
makes a great commentary for the podcast, so that's great.
I love it. Yeah, I've been meaning to change it because even I like sort of curl a little, like it was good as a joke. But I'm
Cringe a
gonna
little
go.
time.
Yeah, I'm a little
A
tired
little
of my own joke.
PTSD from back in the day. Yeah.
Exactly. Oh man, where were we?
I was just wondering that myself. Yes. So we were talking about challenges and adaptation and tech and bleeding edge and cutting edge. And sometimes you adapt too fast. And then we drifted off into MarTech and tech
Oh
focus.
yes, yes. So just remember that, like early adopters, like for example, the
Yes.
first smartwatch wasn't made by Apple. It was made
I
by
don't think
Microsoft.
they made the first smartphone either, even though
No,
they released the iPhone in 2007, but they didn't make the first one either.
that's exactly right. Great, great eye for that. So that's the thing, right? Is like being the first entrant doesn't always confer advantage. So
Right.
assessing the technology and saying, okay, does my business gain a competitive advantage for this?
Mm,
What does regression toward the mean look like? Like once the market becomes saturated, does if everybody has this, does me being here first mean that I'm convert sooner, right? If it be
mm,
like if I'm going to convert prospective clients faster because I have
right.
this technology in my portfolio, let us move ahead. If
Hmm.
it is something that is easy to defect from, right? What's the saying that if a decision is easily reversible, you make it ASAP. If it's
Hmm.
got low reversibility, you make it ALAP or as late as possible. So
Right.
looking at the reversibility of these technologies, is this something we should be an early adopter on? So on and so forth. Definitely is a little bit about thinking about the market one it's operating in and whether or not that technology confers an advantage. Does it
Hmm.
lower your fixed costs, for example? If it does,
Yeah. Right.
that might be something you want to do. Are you incurring additional risk of having extra expenses? Non
Hmm.
billable events like, oh, we're migrating from one AI platform to another because
Hmm.
they decided that they couldn't handle it anymore, right? Things like that.
Hmm.
Certainly
Yeah.
worthy of consideration.
Yeah. That's a really good one. I think it's there, that whole bright, shiny object syndrome. I think tech can very easily become that, where, like you said, you're jumping on every new thing, but maybe not always evaluating how is it actually going to help move the company forward? Is it going to help you take care of your clients better? Is it going to help you provide more value? Whatever your matrix is, I think it's really becoming more and more important to have that matrix in place to be able to evaluate new tech, because it's hitting us so fast from so many different angles. We were actually just talking about this morning. when as AI is first started emerging, everybody had an AI for something or other, and this is still going on. But we've now got a lot of companies that were early adapters, so bleeding edge adapters, that are now starting to combine a bunch of the technology that came out phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, whatever, into more cohesive programs. So what you used to have to buy 5 different subscriptions for, they're all now providing in one. And so more and more, this is kind of the next evolution, and this is normal. But for us now, we've got to not just have our matrix for evaluating new tech. We're having to go back and reevaluate tech we've already signed up for. Is there now something out there that can combine all of these and in a better way than us having to jump from thing to thing to thing? And how much money is that going to save us, or is it going to cost us more subscription wise but save us time? And that balance there. But we're definitely running into that because we're hitting now some of these second and third phases of launch and iteration, and it is really exciting to see a lot of these IT companies or AI companies start to combine and perfect the things instead of having to have, like I said, five different AI subscriptions and move things from app to app or SaaS program to SaaS program kind of a thing. But yeah, technology is not going to slow down at all. It's just going to get worse, as far as the speed and all of that kind of thing. At least that's what it feels like to me.
We have 8 billion of us on the planet, 8 billion plus, right? That's a lot
Right.
of brains. That's a lot of people thinking new ideas of how to
Yeah.
remix existing stuff or add to
Hmm.
new. Yeah, the technology is ultimately a natural outgrowth of creativity, and
Hmm.
just have a lot of. We just live in a particularly compelling time where
Yeah.
there's a lot of people who are trying to add value to the world and
Hmm.
arising in a lot of different technology. Some of it will be, might end up the way the shovel, right? It's a stub. It's
Yep.
good. We've got it. Office products, for example, like uh, I know there's the AI inclusion. Okay, well, what's after that, right? Is there anything?
Hmm.
Maybe it's hard to tell, right? I mean, um, it's not the end of history, never is. But
Right.
that the evolution of an office product versus evolution of something else will
Hmm.
it might take form, and there might be a lot of other different versions that are floating around out there trying to find something that makes impact.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So, what advice might you give somebody looking to get into managed services, or even just somebody looking to start their own business? What are some of the things that you kind of wish you could have gone back and done different? Hindsight being 2020. Is there anything that really stands out that you're kind of like, oh man, if I had only known this?
Yeah, I think one of the things I wish I had known. So I came into this obviously coming from an IT background. I don't really have a lot of financial background. I've had to build my financial competency over time
Right.
through the school of hard knocks, right? Figuring things out.
Hmm.
One of the things that I think is really, really important to fully embrace as if you're coming like me from, like, hey, I love this, I love the sea. I want to be a captain. Okay, well, are you going to run a shipping
Right.
company? Are you going
Yeah.
to, how are you going to manage your logistics? How are you going to manage your bill of lading? How are you going to manage your marketing, getting people to ship with you? All
Hmm.
because you have that deep, abiding love of the sea. And I
Right.
have, of course, a deep, abiding love of technology, but I too wanted to do those things, right? So understanding really financials, some of that you can be acquired over time, right? Figuring out
Hmm.
your value proposition, figuring out your supply chain, what vendors you want to work with, what freelancers are you going to be bringing in, if you're going to be bringing in any, what that looks like. Some of that has to be lived experience, and there's no way to think
Right.
your way ahead of it. You just have to
Sure.
be in the moment.
Hmm.
But bookkeeping is bookkeeping is bookkeeping is bookkeeping,
Oh, so true.
and taxes are taxes are taxes are taxes, right? And
Unfortunately,
all of
yes.
that is fixed, right? What's the saying, right? Three
Hmm.
things: death, taxes. I forget what the other one is, right? Things,
Yeah.
constants, right?
Right. Yep. The only thing that doesn't change. Yep.
Other things doesn't change, right? So I would encourage anybody who's looking to start a business to think about their financial processes. One of the early mistakes that I made was I didn't have good cash flow management. I was like, well, I'm just
Mm,
going to invoice everything at the end of the month. And
sure.
then I'm doing it on net 30, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
Ooh,
So
it's
you're
going to
looking
be a
at 60
problem.
days. Ooh,
Yeah,
if
oh,
they
yeah,
pay
yeah.
on time.
If
Yes.
they pay on time, right? So, I was, of course, taking what I thought was the way that mature organizations, mature businesses do it, right? And I'm
Right.
just going to batch it out at the end of the month. I'll focus on delivery, and then we'll do
Right.
the invoicing at the end. That, for the reasons that you cringed, right?
Yes. Oh man, yes.
Oh, it's so painful. Yeah. So,
Hmm.
obviously, like that, good that I was able to adjust, but boy, there were some really dicey moments with that kind of mistake,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So, listeners, you think about starting a business, think about your cash flow, right? Think
Mm.
about that, especially once you get payroll involved.
Oh
Now you've
yeah.
got, right, you got payroll, and
Hmm.
the last thing you want to be doing is pulling on your line of credit to make payroll, right?
Right.
That's not a great place to be in. You want to be pulling on your line of credit for projects, stretch tasks, things that you
Right.
need a little extra money to secure the supply so that you can get the invoice out and
Hmm.
have that space, right? So, in my view, getting some of your financials in order in terms of what's your tempo, what's your invoicing tempo look like. If you think through that ahead of time, that's going to be something that you can do without having to necessarily read the room. The other thing to be thinking about
Yeah.
is those other things that I kind of hinted at in my view. Like, what is your actual value proposition going to look like? What is your
Hmm.
competitive advantage? We worked
Right.
through ours, right? Through the
Hmm.
stuff we talked about earlier, like, oh, okay, our focus is going to be on security, but it's going to be this baked in, right? It's not going to be like, have the car and then we're going to bolt on the security. If you think about the car
Right.
analogy for a second, you build a
Hmm.
car and then you bolt on security. Is the transmission really going to be up for handling all that extra weight?
Right.
Probably not. Not
Yeah.
unless you designed it from the beginning, right? From the jump.
Hmm.
So that would be where my encouragement is to think about your core value proposition. Jim Collins, I love
Hmm.
Jim Collins. I know his books are a little dated now, but for me, Good to Great, Built to Last are just I just go back to them every few years and I reread
Hmm.
them. They're really good. And he has this Venn diagram about what you're passionate about, what you can be
Yeah.
the best in the world about, and what's your economic engine. And I
Hmm.
would highly consider that somebody sit down and think through those things. Like, what do you like? I'm
Hmm.
super passionate about cybersecurity. I can nerd out for days just talking about offensive, defensive, all the different things. But the market here needs somebody that can take that and move it into something that they can consume, right? Having
Right.
that knowledge by itself doesn't deliver value.
Right.
How you materialize it does. So that
Yeah.
would be the questions that I would pose to anybody who's thinking about getting into starting a business, is to think very carefully about those three things, and then
Hmm.
to think materially, very sort of almost pedantically, like be specific. How are you going to deliver that value to your client, right? If you're going to go
Hmm.
into doing, you're going to be a bakery, what's going to set you apart? Is it going to be? Is it ambiance? Right? Are you going to be regional? Is it going to be? Is
Right.
it going to be something else? Like, what's going to make your bakery be the one that people are going to choose you over competing alternatives?
Hmm. Yeah. I love that. Is Built to Last the one where he's talking about the businesses that don't make it? Or is that a different? I can't remember the title on that one. Have you read that one where he's
No,
talking about the
I
businesses that
should.
crash?
No, I think that's a newer one, isn't it?
It is. It's a newer one. I mean, it's still like maybe 5, 7 years old now, but that one was fascinating as well because he goes back and profiles a lot of the businesses that he talked about in the first books, that many of them were not great anymore. Some of them didn't even exist anymore. And so he does this whole, I don't know, he him and his research, which is amazing because his stuff is so research backed. But he goes through and he identifies, if I remember right, it's been a while since I've read it, but there's like 4 or 5 cycles that he identifies that a business goes through before there's no coming back. And he
Mm,
talks about that at how to identify each level, and that really, I'm going to say it's 5 levels. I could be a little bit wrong on that one, but like the first
sounds like
4, for example, you can come back from. Like there's ways to come back, but he's like, once in his research, once you hit that 5th level, 5th layer of hell, there's no coming back from that. And it was really fascinating because I read it during a time where Beacon was really struggling. It was part of what drew me to it. And it was fascinating because I was like, oh man, we're in like the 2nd layer, like 2nd cycle kind of a thing, and talking about how to, ways to pull out. And he talks about businesses that have hit those levels and pulled back out. Are you looking up the title right now?
I am.
Awesome. Cool.
How the mighty fall.
There you go. Thank you. And I would add that one, like read the
I'm
good
going
to
in.
great ones because they're amazing. They really, really are. You're right. There's some dated stuff in there, but the basic business foundational principles are still so impactful. But I would add, fascinatingly enough, I would add that to the list. And he talks about in the introduction, he's like, I know this is not a popular topic. This is not a happy, fun topic. But he's like, but let's flip the script and look at it. If we can understand these cycles before our business hits them, or like where we were with Beacon, where we were like in the 2nd cycle of it. And I was like, this is why we're struggling. This is why we're dealing, because we're in this. And he was like identifying so many of the things that we were struggling with. And even identifying, okay, here's how you pull out of them. Or look for this. And if you tweak this, when you hit this Y in the road, if you go this direction, you're more likely to pull out of it. And it really helped me reframe some of the things in our business to not just be, oh man, we suck. I'm new at this, because no matter where you are in business, you're new at this. And it's like, okay, no, these are common things that other people have struggled with. And this is how some of them figured out how to get through it. And if nothing else, I did find it very encouraging. Like, okay, I'm not alone. These things that our business is struggling with, we're not the only business that struggles with this. And there is a path through. So before you hit that 5th layer of hell or whatever, if it's 4 or 5,
Yeah.
I can't remember
Yeah.
which one, but it was, so I really appreciated him having the courage to write that book, because I can't imagine it was necessarily at first brush a positive book to write. But I did appreciate his challenge to reframe the perspective around why that book was so important, to really understand that these are potentially natural cycles a business goes through. And if you
Yes.
recognize that, you can change course, to go back to your boat and captain analogy. But if you don't understand that that's what you're going toward, you might just keep trying to go through in the wrong direction and just dig yourself deeper. But one of the things he talks about in there is humility, and not having pride. That's one of the cycles, is pride of the owners or pride of the leadership of like, we know what we're doing. And he talks about having humility to embrace new ideas and embrace stuff, and not, that, I don't know if this is where the adage came from, but he does reference this a lot. The most scary phrase in business is, we've always done it this way. The most dangerous phrase in business, we've always done it this way. And he talks about that you can't, as a business, live there. And
Yeah.
that's it is a killer for business. You always have to be evaluating. We talked about that matrix earlier of evaluation, and is this really going to help? But you can't get stuck in that pride of, we've always done it this way, so why would we change, kind of a thing. But
Right.
yes, I love his stuff too. I
I'm
love that
gonna
you
I'm
brought it
gonna
up.
I'm gonna order this book like as soon as we're like, obviously a big fan of Collins. There's so much that you said there that I love. So one of the things is just the last little bit there about, we've
Yeah.
always done it this way. For me, that's a loss of history. That is like,
Mm.
because it's risky in both sides, right? One is
Yeah.
staying stuck and not
Right.
evolving the process. The other one is iterating on process with unknown risk because we've
Mm.
lost the history for why we've done it this way. Why did we do
Oh,
this?
so powerful. Yeah.
Was it a reflective of an artifact of technology at the time? Was it something
Hmm.
that we had to do it this way because that was the limitation of the supporting processes and instrumentation?
Hmm.
Or have we evolved this process and procedure in this way because our customers have certain needs that are met when we do it this way? The loss of that
Hmm.
history, that's the unfortunate thing, right?
Hmm.
And some of this, right, people move on, right? We don't, right?
Right.
Organizations, unless you're really big, don't have historians, right? We need each other.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
but what that
Hmm.
tells me is that nobody's been actively passing this information along
Right.
within the organization. And that's
Hmm.
something that I would recommend. If you've got mentors, let them ment. I don't know what the right word is to let
Yes.
them do
I love
mentorship, right?
that. Yeah.
Right. And then the other thing that I thought of as you're going through this descriptions book, really selling me on it. Like, I'm sold. Like, you are absolutely in the right position. I will buy what you're selling. Um, is that might be a really good framework for evaluating your suppliers as well too. So one of the
Oh,
things that we do
yeah.
at DeepTree is we have a rule of thumb that if one of our suppliers gets bought by a private equity firm, we know that layoffs for the people that made the company happen. There's a
Mm.
golden parachute for the folks that are at the top
Right.
level, but the economic engine is usually driven by the mid-level engineers and
Hmm.
the others, right? And they usually are going to be, um, you know, riffed in some sort of way, right? They might get
Right.
a silver parachute. That's on the terms of the acquisition and
Yeah.
not our business. But we know is that the value proposition is going to erode and that the price
Mm.
is going to increase. Now,
Mm.
our job is to make sure that we're positioning the right technology for our customers at the right price.
Mm.
And so, what we can't have is this inflation of price and this deflation of value.
Mm.
And, if we can get a little bit more sophisticated on that, like, yeah, it's just a rule of thumb, like, oh, okay, so and so has bought this company. Okay, let's
Yeah.
look at this and see what, where is it in our portfolio? Is this central? Again, is it a highly reversible? Can we exit quickly, or do we need to have a larger migration away from it? How do we plan for this? We look at that very carefully because
Hmm.
those our clients are expecting us to be managing those relationships and
Right.
making informed decisions with
Mm.
our recommendations. We can't be showing up with half-baked ideas and half-baked
Right.
technology, right?
Yeah.
Especially if we're going to be offering, if it's going to be premium prices, a lot of these do, like, oh, we need shareholder value. How are we going to do this? We're going to lower expenses and we're going to increase prices, and then we'll get our
Yep.
okay, yeah. Customers, and a lot of these firms, I feel like they understand how money works, but they don't necessarily know how business works. So they forgot how business
Hmm.
works.
Right.
And customers are like, this is, I can walk across the street and get a competing product for 75% of the price. And frankly, I'll
Right.
probably get better support. People are going to be more interested in me than you are.
Yeah. They're
We're very
hungry.
sensitive to that. So I'm very
Hmm.
interested in this book to see if, like,
Yeah.
can I improve our maturity, right? Can we look at this
Hmm.
in a more comprehensive view? Because it might not
Yeah.
just be helpful for us internally, which I see the value immediately, but it also
Right.
might be a good way of adopting a very rigorous lens like Jim Collins is so good at to look it up.
Yes. Yeah.
So excited.
Yes. Well, as you were talking, reminded me of another story. I happen to have the book right here because I just finished reading it, Reset by Dan Heath. But he tells the story in here of this operational expert, that gets brought in to turn a company around. And so it's this factory, and he's going through and all the efficiency stuff, and stuff had gotten lost in history in the company. And
Mm,
so he found out it was a paper plant, and they were shutting down one of their primary machines, printers or something like that, like their biggest thing, got shut down at lunchtime every day. And it was shut down for like an hour or an hour and a half. I don't remember exactly why. And then would get started back up again. And of course, that was expensive to shut this thing down and get it going again. And it took time and people. And
mm,
so he kept going, like, why in the world are we doing this? Why have we been doing this? And everybody was like, well, it's just what we've always done. And he goes, yeah, but why? And nobody knew. And so he kept digging and digging, and he finally found this person who'd been promoted to other departments, but had been there forever. And they're like, oh, well, 10, 15 years ago, the power plate where we got our power was irregular, and we tracked it down and figured out that the power fluctuated the most in this one window of time, which just happened to be around lunchtime. And so because it corresponded with lunchtime, and it was damaging the machine, the power fluctuations. And so they were having to put all this money into repairing this gargantuan machine. So it was cheaper at that time to shut the machine down for an hour, hour and a half every day because of the power fluctuations. Well, the power plant had improved over the years and those fluctuations weren't happening anymore. But this had now become part of their culture and process and what they did. And at the time, it was a good solution, but that solution wasn't needed anymore. But it had never evolved because that had also been lost in their chronicling of why they did what they did. And I loved that analogy because he's just like, it might have been really relevant when we first started doing it. That's the way we've always done it was a reason, and there was a good reason for it. But as things evolve, if we don't go back and reevaluate our processes, our security, the way we do things, we can fall into these traps of it's the way it's always been. And it was good at one point, but it's not anymore. And I loved that analogy because I feel like that happens, like I said earlier in the podcast, a lot where we're like, well, this program was great at one point, and this one was great for that at one point, and this one was great for that. And next thing we know, we've got 5 programs that now could be replaced by one.
Yeah.
But if we're not on top of that and aware that that cycle happens in business, because oftentimes us as founders and CEOs, we got a lot of other fires putting out. And that machine just shuts down at noon every day, and it's always been doing that. So what's the big deal? But, understanding that we have to keep evaluating and be open to adaptability and to change because what worked 5 years ago, or in their case, 10 years ago, for really good reasons, those really good reasons aren't applicable anymore. So have we now evaluated where it is now and adapt to where it is now? So I just reinforcing like what you were saying of just, we can't lose some of that history and that why we did what we did at some point, because that can just become ingrained and no longer be important. But if we're not evaluating it, we've lost it and don't know why we're doing what we're doing anymore. But I think this happens a lot, especially as founders evolving into CEOs and handing stuff off to somebody. I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations with your IT team where your staff are going, now, why are you doing this the way you're doing it? And I'm like, well, that's because I used to be the IT person. And so if they didn't do XYZ, I was not going to be able to help them. But I don't have to do that anymore. So you guys can do it however you see fit. And that's one of the beautiful things about bringing experts in, because they find those holes. And there's been so many times I've laughed. I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't believe we're still doing it that way. And it's like, it's irrelevant now, but it was the only way we could survive 5 years ago or 10 years ago or whatever the case may be.
Wow. I've gotten 2 books that I need to get for this session. I love this. And just the wisdom there. Like, I really love that. Like you've pointed out the power of because, right? Like when we deliver a narrative on how we're doing this, I think just hearing from you, I'm just processing and like, well, yeah, it sounds like if we can say, well, hey, you know what, because the power is really janky and it's causing us a lot of repairs, we have to call somebody out, we have unexpected downtime, it's right. Our customers are being upset because we're delivering things late to them, because we're not able to meet a print schedule. Okay, well, now I've got a because that kind of rides along for free. That's the power of storytelling, right? Like,
right.
Stories matter within organizations, right? It's one of the reasons why we got to have, outside of, good just sort of being togetherness of but birthday parties and spending some time together that's not necessarily directly task oriented where we're marinating together can enhance the opportunity for us to tell those stories, but also having
Hmm.
some intentionality, right? Of like when we're telling somebody that we do something a particular way, it's been handed down to us because, right? It's sort of riding along in the passenger seat. And then somebody can say, some person who's, being introduced to this for the first time is coming at it with fresh eyes and say, well, is that still true? Is that
Right. Yeah.
because I mean, what if the power was still, janky, right?
Right.
Don't want to make the change, right? And it sounds like Dan didn't go off and be like, well, things are probably different. Let's go, right? He dug
Right.
and dug and dug, right? Until he got the why. He got the
Hmm.
core root, right? That root cause analysis, right? Asking 5 whys, or for him, maybe 25 whys, but
Yeah.
getting there. And I
Yeah.
think that we can lower that effort. We just, just make it a cultural norm that, hey, you know what?
Yeah.
When you tell somebody what you're doing and
Hmm.
and how you're doing it, add the why. We'll get maybe 3 out of the
Hmm.
5.
Yeah.
Hope on my words, right? Well, I guess the other ones
Right.
are probably in the process, but yeah, get that full, get the how, get the why, get the what, get the who, and get the where.
Hmm.
Right? Do it all. Why not?
Yeah.
It'll save us heartache down the road. It's an investment.
Yes. Yeah. Well said. Well said. Well, thank you so much, Peter, for all your time. That's just the last hour has sped by. So thank you so much for joining us today. And we'll put links to all the books we talked about in when we post this. And we'd love to hear if in the comments if you have any other books you'd like to add to the list. I think that's one of my favorite things that comes out of these podcasts is all the different books and resources that all of us have discovered in our journeys. So we'll make sure we put those down there. And thank you again for joining us today with Peter with DeepTree. And we hope you come back and join us for our next podcast. So thank you, listeners, and have a wonderful day.
You have been listening to the Beacon Way podcast. Make sure to join us for new episodes every week. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Beacon Way on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.